The New York ska jazz ensemble with a little nifty tune called In Motion. It's from their 2011 album, Double Edge. This is Leid Stories. I'm Utrice Leid. I hope it is not raining and thundering and whatever else the weather wants to do where you are, but it's doing that here. Hopefully everything will be all right and we would be in good shape. Well, he could call himself the chosen one if he wants, but according to an Associated Press poll, 62% would disagree. 62% of people polled by the Associated Press disapprove. In other words, they don't like the president just about now. That is astonishing. And then again, not really. When you consider, or when you add up all of the flubs and foibles we have been documenting since he took office. But our story today is not really about polls as such, except that this poll that came out is indicative of how right we were, how on point we were in analyzing this president. And the reason I'm citing this poll is to indicate that here is the exact scenario that we've been talking about. The president has an entirely, like Mr. Magoo, he has an entirely different view of the world, causing all kinds of calamity where he goes, and not seeing it, or perhaps choosing not to see it. The problem here, though, is that many, many, many millions of other people are seeing it, but we can't seem to find a way to get serious about removing this president from office. We've talked about psychiatrists and psychologists and how they analyzed the president, and it was not a good report card. We've talked about previous polls in which people had major difficulty with the way he was operating. We've talked among ourselves about the acts of the president that are incomprehensible. Very early on, you may recall, yours truly, I said there's something wrong with this man. Even before he officially took office, he had given any astute observer enough ammunition, enough cause to worry. And he has fulfilled all of our expectations with regard to his mental capacity to be in the nation's highest office. This is very telling. Yes, there is an effort afoot. It's in the beginning stages, but he's already halfway through his term. The effort is to see if there's enough support in Congress, in the House in particular, to basically bring a move against him on the grounds that he must be impeached, he must be removed. And nothing has happened. I'll tell you this. I'm not the only one. I am positive. I just could not be the only person on this planet right now and in these United States right now who worries constantly about what this president, who is not in his right mind, What will he do next? And he is not going to be suffering the consequences himself. Oh no, he'll pass that along. That's when he becomes a Democrat. He believes that everybody should share the consequences. This is crazy. I have never seen anything like it. Now, it is possible that we had presidents back in the Civil War era who were basically out of whack. It's very possible. But not like this. This president is out of control. And lately, he has ramped it up to such a degree. You can't help but feel, even if you're not a professional, psychiatric professional, you don't have to be to see that he's unraveling. This thing that has him by the throat, this disorder or disease or whatever it is that has him by the throat, he can't escape it. He can't get away from it. It's on him 24/7. And he's doing things that nobody in their right mind would agree are normal, especially for a head of state, and more especially as a head of state for one of the leading countries of the world. Everything is in turmoil. He's spending money like crazy. Next year, the projection is that the United States will have $1 trillion plus deficit. That's because he's like a kid in a toy shop, a toy store. He is playing with all the toys he's got. And he's got the wherewithal to do it. And they're letting him do it. We should have seen an effort, a concerted effort a long time ago. You know how in regular life people are involuntarily placed into treatment when things get so bad, it is the only option people think that they have. Because left to people who are in such a condition, they will not do it. But we have a guy who can press a button and blow up half the world. And he wouldn't even, he would consider that a big deal, but in a positive way, that he has this power. Finally. He might have been dreaming about it all of his life, but now it's real. He's got an army, a navy, an air force, and so he makes trouble all over the world. Gets us into war and conflict, alienates our long-term allies, insults people, and behaves like a person who is not in control of himself. And nobody is raising the urgent question here, what do you do with a president whose actions are just so bizarre, and they are getting more and more bizarre by the day, to the point that every day there is an expectation that the president would have placed the country in a very delicate situation or a very dangerous situation. He has advisors. I thought they would advise. Mr. President, we have become concerned about your conduct. And we are urging you to consider resigning from office for your own good and for the good of the country. This cannot go on. And we, the people, are deluding ourselves to think as we go to sleep and we feel that all will be well in the morning when we wake up. But just in case, you check in intermittently between the time you go to bed and the time you wake up in the morning to see if anything catastrophic has happened or is about to happen. Because we have no idea who's controlling this president. But it's clear he's out of control. And it seems to me that there should be some group of advisors or people who are answerable to him, who also are answerable to the country, that this is untenable. Somehow, the president has got to go and go into treatment. He must resign. He must get out. He's no good to the country. Not like this. And people are so casual about it, especially the people in his administration, the people who are supposed to be in opposition in Congress, very casual about this. Well, we don't have too much longer to go before the election. Hopefully, by then, we would have built a base sufficient enough to topple him. They're thinking this way. They're not thinking that may not be a possibility at all. Nobody seems to know what the president is going to do from moment to moment. And he's already done some crazy stuff that has put the country in harm's way. And every minute of the day, people are panicking because they have to pay attention to everything this president does, although they can't. A lot of what this president does is outside of scrutiny. Maybe he makes his decisions in his pajamas at 3 o'clock in the morning when he can't sleep. You can't trust somebody who cannot sleep and does not sleep. We have had psychiatrists and psychologists warn us. In fact, that was the theme of their paper that they submitted for public scrutiny. A duty to warn. They have warned us. This president is not on an even keel. This president is very unstable for all kinds of reasons. But if you've noticed in the past couple of weeks in particular, or months, past 2-3 months, he has gone overboard with stupid decisions that, in fact, are contrary to the country's interests. He thinks that this is his own. He thinks this is Greenland, which he wants to purchase. And then he's angry. Why should the people of Greenland be angry because I say I want to buy their country? Are these the thoughts of a rational person or somebody really far off the bend? But people are being very quiet. They don't want to discuss this. Or if they're discussing it, they're not telling anybody. And there's no evidence that anything good has come out of these discussions. The only thing good that could come out of discussions that they might be having is we see the president having a news conference tomorrow announcing his resignation. That's not going to happen because he's the ultimate narcissist. As he said, I am the chosen one. Who talks like that? Who talks like that? Unless you're taking some very strong, delusional kind of medication. And can we afford to have any, for any period of time longer, can we afford to have a debilitated president? A man who is out of his mind, who behaves erratically, who is showing all of the signs, especially in recent weeks, of a breakdown. That's what he's having. He's having a breakdown. Because even he has come to realize that a lot of the stuff that he and his administration are doing are stupid and wrong and racist. Even he is beginning to realize that. How could he defend himself against that? He can't. 62% of people polled disapprove of the president. And Congress is moving very fast at 0.02 miles per hour. While we are in the midst of a crisis, is impeachment the only way to go? How do you accelerate this? The president he's got to be out of office, or else the country is doomed. Nobody seems to be able to control him. Nobody seems to give him the right advice. He has surrounded himself with yes people. Yes, 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 yes. Nobody criticizing him at all. And then look, his closest advisors are whom? His marginally intelligent children. Marginally. And they're in the White House. We haven't even seen even the beginnings of an effort to answer the question, how did Ivanka Trump end up being an ambassador plus a special advisor plus, intelligence officer almost for the country? Do you recall any hearings on that position, which is a cabinet level position? Do you recall anybody approving her to do that job? Literally placing herself in the midst of all these leaders of the world as if she was an equal with them. Nobody raised a question. Nobody could say, well, wait a minute. You're halfway through your term. Your advisors and appointees at certain levels have to be approved after and through hearings. Your cronyism is an insult, an ongoing insult. How should we feel to have people like Ivanka and her husband, her vampiric husband, who doesn't, it looks like it hurts him to smile. How did he get there? He's the son of a felon, a convicted felon. We're not asking these questions. We're not insisting on answers. All these political people, the obvious question is cronyism now legal? And the answer is obviously yes. They're jetting here and jetting there and making policy decisions and whatnot on our dime and on our time. And they're there right in the White House, just in case we have any doubt as to what they're supposed to be doing. They have power. unapproved power. Trump has set up his business right there in the White House, and everybody is in business in the White House. Did you not see the reaction of the other leaders of the world when Ivanka Trump showed up and thought she was going to take her rightful place among them as an equal? They looked at her as like, okay, so clearly you haven't taken your medication today. They refused. They just moved away from her. You don't belong there. You have no credentials. You're a fraud. And now this country, we have been taken hostage. A president who has taken this country hostage, compelling the country to do all kinds of things that in anybody's logical mind should be the furthest thing from our thoughts. Everything is out of whack. People are leaving the administration. The bureaucrats are leaving. You know, that's a bad sign. They're being paid very well. They said, I can't, even though I'm being paid really well, I can't function in this environment. It would look bad on my resume. I gotta go. So that is the question I bring to you today. While people are banking a lot on this impeachment process actually resulting in impeachment, and that's quite a ways away. If it happens, it would happen just as he's finishing his term. Is there nothing else that we can do as a country to express deep concern? I know people who have become almost, panic attack ridden. They worry. How safe is the country? How safe are my few dollars that I put in the bank? Who is running this country? Clearly it can't be Donald Trump. It's somebody else telling Donald Trump, advising him as to what he ought to do next. And they're crazy. And every day since he has taken office, he has put this country through this level of stress and openly committing all kinds of wrongdoing. As I said, you don't have to ask if Trump is into cronyism. He's an advocate. They're right there, next to Daddy, in the White House, doing whatever they want to do. They're traveling on the people's dime. They have a whole Air Force plane for themselves and helicopters, and life is great. And not one peep from the U.S. Senate, which is the body that is supposed to be holding hearings for every person at a certain level who is nominated for any particular post. Trump says there's no need for that. I nominated and I approved, and they're working for me. End of story. What are you going to do about it? The arrogance of this man. The crookedness of his men. That's the question I'm posing to you today. Must we wait to see whether the effort being mounted in the House to arrive at something approximating articles of impeachment, which it will then have to go to the Senate for vote. And by the time all this crawls along, Trump would have completed his first term. And who knows what the state of the state would be by then. So we'll take this little break while you gather your thoughts, and then we come back at 888-874-4888. You're listening to Leid Stories on PRN.FM. I'm Utrice Leid, and we're talking about a poll, the most recent one, on Donald Trump, coming from the Associated Press, indicating that 62% of those polled disapprove of the president in office. And I'm asking, do we have to wait? He's halfway through his term. So many irregularities were dismissed, overlooked, not tended to. The president is showing all the signs of a major breakdown that he's experiencing right now. He's going through a deep process within himself. And are we just to trust that, well, you have to leave it up to the system to figure it out? There are enough illegalities, including right there in the White House. We have appointees who've been functioning for half of his term already without undergoing a hearing, not being looked at closely. One of them, as I pointed to, are his children. I mean, for one thing, they haven't been closely examined. What is Jared Kushner's, what are his qualifications for negotiating peace in the Middle East? What are Ivanka Trump's qualifications for economic development in other parts of the world? What is going on here? It's called cronyism, folks. And we have been tolerating cronyism for half of this man's term. Are we prepared to go for the other half? Will something be done with this president to remind him he is not, as he says, the chosen one, of whom no questions are to be asked, no scrutiny to be given? He does what he wants, and he's been getting away with it. And I think the results of the poll suggest that people are beginning to feel very uncomfortable with the erratic president. They don't want this anymore. They realize the risks involved, and they don't want to have anything to do with it. Lincoln from Mount Vernon, you start us off today.
Yeah, good day, Utrice.
Hello.
Yes, I am not in the Mutual Admiration Society, so therefore I have a different take on a lot of this. And first I'll say, chicken come home to roost. I want to say, what is the difference between I am the chosen one and this thing that has been propagated by all the previous presidents of exceptionalism, as said by Obama? What is the difference between I'm the chosen one and and manifest destiny, which have been embraced by all of them.
But you're raising the wrong question. The question on the table right now is, what do you think ought to happen, having come to this stage as a nation with an out-of-control president who is putting the whole country at risk and the whole process of governing this country? We have no way of exercising the famous phrase of checks and balances over this president. What do you think ought to be done? Yes, we have in the making an effort at impeachment, but that is going to take time. Do we have that time? Are we confident that between the time they have a result or a resolve to do something, and that after that it takes even more time, that we can trust that this president would not put this country in a very serious situation and position?
My take on it is we should deal with the stress because of the stress that the previous several administrations have placed on Syria, Libya, and all these places where people are dying as a result of them, and we are not crying about it. Yes, you all must go through this stress because you don't. Your sense of value is all off. You ignore murder, but yet you are talking about him being embarrassing to the country. And what is the difference between his children being appointed and America going into countries and destabilizing governments to put in who they want to put in? Yes, you deserve Trump, and I say he should live out his term, even though I'm not a Trump supporter. And I think you all need to open your eyes, and until you open your eyes and admit to your wickedness of this country by the previous administrations, you will have more Trumps, and you will deserve more.
But you're not answering the question. You're being very philosophical and very,
I'm talking practically.
No, but you're not answering the question, and you have a habit of doing that. A question is asked: is there anything in the interim between an alleged or an anticipated effort to impeach and now halfway through the president's term, where we have seen up to this time enough evidence that he is not the right guy for the job? He has imperiled the country, and enough people of authority have pointed it out, but there has been no resolution as to what to do. So it's not a question about the philosophy of it and what. No, you're taking us. You do this. We're talking A. You start off by telling us your position is C. Well, that's good, but it is not the question I'm asking that you're answering. You're answering a question I didn't ask.
I personally, I do not support the impeachment of Trump, okay? And I'm saying it from this perspective. And you have to hear me out.
But you're answering another question I didn't ask. The question is not whether you support impeachment of Trump or not. The question is, are you at least cognizant that the president appears to be falling apart? The president appears to be in a personal crisis, and his administration too. And the poll suggests that people have come to see that. They have come to see that we're in trouble as a nation because our leader does not appear to have all of his oars in the water.
I think you are failing to realize that we have been in trouble as a nation every time we went about the place and create enemies. You say that he's not normal. The ones who are normal are the ones who wreaked havoc throughout the world. So
Okay, you insist
what
on
is the benefit of?
Vernon Lincoln. I mean, you insist on going on your own path. That is not the issue today. When a question is asked, and certainly the hope is that you have an opinion, you have your own opinion, but about the issue raised in the question. You go off on your tangent and then you take us there with you, or at least you attempt to. What I'm trying to suggest to you is listen very carefully what is being asked of you. And if you feel you can address it, then come on in. If you're not really equipped to address it at this time, then we'll catch you in the next go round. But it is not a good feeling to have you hijack the question and take us where you want us to go. That's not what's happening here. We have a question on the table. You can either address it or not. What's it going to be?
I say again that.
Repeating the wrong thing
Okay,
again. I'm
repeat your
asking,
question again.
are you
Repeat
going
your
to
question.
address it, or are you going to take a pass?
My answer is this. I think you want to hear what you want to hear, not what you need to hear.
Okay, thank you so much, because this is not the hour of criticism. We're trying to have a conversation. I'm trying to tell you, because it has occurred almost every time you call, that the question asked is A. You will start in your answer or your response with D, which is not the question. And then you would force us to go along with your response because you believe it's the right response. It is not. It's not relevant to the question asked. So we'll table this for another day, and we'll hear from you another time. Chris from New York, you're on the air, Chris.
How you doing, Trace?
Okay.
And hello to the PRN listeners and staff.
Thank you.
I was kind of catching in and out of the show, trying to listen while I was preparing to leave the house. So for me personally, just so I don't waste too much time here, your question was: is there something that we could be doing, or is this what? Could you please ask the question again for me, because I don't want to go off on the wrong.
We have a president that is showing some very disturbing signs, personally, and as leader of the country. He is not in sync with the country or the concerns that the people of the country have. We just have this poll coming out today showing that this president, who was so confident that he was popular, he called himself the chosen one. Well, 62% don't think he is a chosen one right now. And it confirms the observation that this president is having some serious internal trouble. His administration is chaotic. He is chaotic. Relations with former allies, in some cases, have been terminated. It's bizarre. Everybody worries about what is happening because there's nothing but chaos. It suggests that an intervention of some type should occur. Okay. The president either must resign or must surround himself with people who can help him make sense of the moment. And if he can't do that, there's going to be even greater craziness and chaos. We can't do that. We can't have it. So, but what can we have? What can be done in our situation as a nation?
As far as this is me, and I'm not as in depth. As far as the systems are concerned, I couldn't sit here and explain the entire skeleton of our political system to you. But if I were to direct energy in a particular direction, I agree with you 100% that there should be some sort of intervention. And I think the problem we have is that, and I've heard this from people on both sides, that they actually appreciate the gridlock in these systems because it actually prevents things from happening. The country swaying in either direction outside of the realm that they like it to exist in. And so while an intervention does make sense, I think we have a system that actually prevents any intervention, especially from the bottom up. We seem to have, the way colleges have tenured professors,
Yes.
Okay, well, we can come in as new students. I come in as a freshman and I'm all revolutionary and I want to make a fuss. And that's fine, but I'm going to graduate in 4 years. And the culture of the college will stay pretty much within operating norms because those professors that have had a job for 5 years and will have that job for another 20 years, they will still be there, picking the textbooks, directing the curriculum. So I think we have a system that is functioning like a tenured professor where things go wrong and there's a fuss made for a period of time, but the people who like it the way it is tend to stick around and keep things within that realm. Now, so I do agree with an intervention. I just don't think we have the mechanisms for it. And I could be wrong, but that's just my, assumption at
Do
best
you
on that.
personally, I'm not asking for your political leaning here, but do you feel comfortable that the country's in good hands with this president?
With this president, absolutely not. And to be honest, I've never felt that about any president. And I think even when people start talking about things like, okay, they say, well, impeach him, right? And it's just like, well, the mechanisms that gave us this president, be it this weird system of voting, and coupled with the electoral college, like if we remove him, but we don't remove the gears and the levers that pushed him into place, I don't see that energy could all be wasted because those same levers can be turned again in a couple of years and we could end up with another him. And
well,
so I think
we could always end up with another Trump. I mean,
yes.
Theoretically, we could always do that, but
and it could get worse.
We're in the moment in which we have to admit whether we think he is fit for the job or not.
And
whether we think that he's doing good to the country or not. Number two, if he's found, or if the majority of people, we have this poll, I don't want to just put all the beans on the poll, but it is quite a significant development that this president is now at 62% disapproval. And it is indicating that there has got to be dramatic and immediate and drastic change. How is that to happen, if it is to happen? Any ideas?
Well, based on that poll, it's hopefully people are starting to realize that there will be tangible. The results of a president are tangible. You can see employers brazen and, they don't want to give raises and we have a lack of unions. They're like actual real things happening, but it's, I don't want to, it's just.
I didn't want to cause even more.
Yeah, he's extremely unfit as a president. I just feel like they're extremely prepared for the way that we usually respond to things. And the things that mostly affect the way people think, and I could be wrong on this, but I see that the narrative tends to be controlled by media. And I mean television and internet and radio. And
something has to be done. We cannot continue this way, where people are seeing what's happening. They're experiencing the anxiety of an uneven situation, and we don't seem to have answers. We just go from day to day, and worse, we pretending we're not seeing it. Thanks so much for your call today. Really appreciate it.
Take care.
Bill from Brooklyn, you're on the air.
The question really is not that difficult, and people are taking the long way around the barn, so to speak, to get to the crux of it. And basically, as I see it, there are three options. Number one, which is unlikely, is that he would resign. And then the second, which is a potential but also unlikely, is the 25th Amendment, which would fall into effect with a disabled president, which he's clearly shown to be. And the last is the examples that people from around the world have shown us in Hong Kong and France, even in Russia, that the people take to the streets and revolt. So that's the way that I see it. I don't know if this country, the people have the true grit to go to that third level and do a massive flash mob of 1 million people in front of the White House and in Washington, D.C., that would demand that this man be removed and step down from office.
Well, you have presented us with three options, and they're all viable. But I thank you for offering them for our consideration, because, when you look at, you take a look at Hong Kong, no guns and, no violence at all, but people are out by the tens of thousands in the street saying, this situation has to change. We cannot deal with this anymore. We have had several countries where people power has forced decisions that those in authority would not make or were reluctant to make. And the people reinforced the issue by just showing up in the street.
That's right.
We don't have anything here like that in the United States. People don't want to put themselves out of the way like that. But three succinct ideas. You offered that he could, resignation could be considered. The 25th Amendment being applied, which is invoking the power of the amendment to remove a president by virtue of unfitness for office.
Mm-hmm.
And the third, people power, people basically expressing their views about the situation we're in by showing up in the street. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Steve, thank you. Steve from California, you're on the air.
Hi, Trace.
Hello.
I really agree with this third option as a kind of a public vote of no confidence. And if people would amass in a large number in a demonstration, say in Washington or whatever, I think a lot of people recognize the power of numbers of people, especially the man himself really seems to center on numbers of people who arrive at his demonstrations. So that's my feeling about the countries that are able to bring down a whole administration by public vote of no confidence.
Personally, is it your sense that there has been a ratcheting up of the president's own, it might be, we could call it his own personal trauma that he's experiencing that is not, he's not expressing to anybody else, but we can see that in recent weeks, particularly, he's unraveling. Do you disagree or agree that he's unraveling, or he seems to be unraveling?
Yeah, I do agree. It's hard to know whether it's actually a form of dementia or insanity, or if it's basically show business. Because every day you think that he can't top the previous outrage.
That's true.
So I don't know whether it's all kind of calculated or not, but it is definitely kind of insane, and we can't have this representing the country.
What do you think people on the whole, in your circles, what are they talking about when they talk about Trump and his demeanor, his attitude?
Well,
what comes up more often than anything else?
Well, people I know, it's actually affecting their psychological health. They're quite disturbed in their lives, and it's manifesting in physical symptoms even. So there is a distress going on in the whole country that where the media is kind of in denial about it, unless it's partisan. So we're in trouble here.
All right. When you say you point to the media, do you get a sense that there isn't the kind of clarity and coverage that we need from the media about basically what is happening in the country?
Well, it's fragmented. I'm just reading about the 20th century German history, and we're starting to become in a kind of a chaos that's reflective of 1930s Germany. So it is distressing to me, and especially since it's known that the only book that Donald Trump reads by his bedside is Mein Kampf.
Wow. We're in trouble. And we have to deal with it. And the first thing that we have to do is to admit what we're experiencing as a nation. It's not being talked about. It's not being talked about in Congress. It's not being talked about generally in the media. They would report of, you get reports of new policies and new trips that are being made and talks to be had and all of things like as if, life is going on normally. But we know it's not normal. Right. We know it. Right. And at some point, there's got to be resolution before, let's do it voluntarily, before it seems like it would be forced upon us. Thank you so much, Steve, for your call today. Thank you. Well, that brings us to the end of our program today. This is a discussion we should continue because we see a deliberate effort to deny the truth in front of our eyes. We're denying it as a nation, and especially in those parts of the nation, as in Congress, as in state legislatures and city councils and so forth. What is the truth? We know it. Let's get to it. Let's deal with it and not ignore it. We ignore it at our peril, but there's no question. 62% saying we disapprove. This is a remarkable result of a poll, a remarkable result, and it should not be ignored. It confirms the feelings, the deep-seated feelings that many millions of people have in this country, and we ought to take heed of it and try to understand what the poll is trying to tell us about the situation and also what we ought to do. Thanks so much for listening. Tomorrow is Free Your Mind Friday. I see we have some people who weren't able to get on today. Let's do a little bit of that tomorrow and follow up on today's discussion and, of course, on anything else, which is what the program is about. So we'll see each other tomorrow. Bye-bye.